My name is Gavin Butler, and you are listening to this week's episode of the Mid-Major Baseball Rundown. Hello, hello, welcome everybody to the Mid-Major Baseball Rundown. I'm your host, Gavin Butler. It is today, May 19th. I've got a great show planned for you all. We'll go into some conference tournament stuff. I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my weekend. This week's guest is Ty Sallie of NJIT and the Hungry Dogs podcast, who just wrapped up his collegiate career this weekend. It was the last weekend of the regular season. A lot of teams wrapped up their seasons. Some players wrapped up their collegiate careers. One player who did was Braze Mitchell of the Iona Gales. I was at their senior day game against Manhattan on Saturday. Braze Mitchell had an awesome moment at the end of his game, hitting a walk-off single to bring two runners home and secure the win against Manhattan. A real emotional and storybook ending. We got a great interview posted on our Instagram page, so go check that out if you haven't already. Also, over this weekend, I was at the Ivy League Championship between Yale and Brown. Yale punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament. We got some real awesome interviews with Coach Brian Ham as well as outfielder Chris DePrimo, who played a real instrumental role in that Ivy League championship run. I'm also going to talk about some conference tournaments and Field of 64 stuff later on. We had the Patriot League championship game one yesterday as Holy Cross took down the Bucknell Bison 11-2 in a statement win in game one at Bucknell. So we will see if Bucknell will bounce back on their home field or if Holy Cross will win one more game and secure their ticket for the NCAA tournament. Game two is at 2 o'clock today in just a few hours. So exciting one over there. Bucknell's got their backs against the wall, and Holy Cross is on the verge of punching their ticket. And with that, I'll just run down kind of what these conference tournament matchups are for today. And in the ACC, this game is probably already going on by the time that you're listening to this, or maybe even concluded, depending on when you listen to this show. We've got Duke and NC State, California, Stanford, Clemson and Notre Dame, Pitt, Louisville. I'm just going to go alphabetically with all the conference tournament matchups that are today. Cal Stanford's 1 o'clock, Clemson, Notre Dame 5, Pittsburgh, Louisville 9 p.m. Eastern. In the Atlantic Sun, we've got Austin P and Jacksonville at 2 o'clock, Stetson and Central Arkansas at 6 o'clock. Big 12, Texas Tech and BYU, Kansas State and Utah, 6:30 p.m., 10:30 p.m. Big 10, we've got Michigan State and Purdue. Again, probably already going on by the time that you're listening to this, 10 a.m. based on the podcast drop time of 9 a.m. just because there's so many conference tournament games to get in. So a lot of these conferences start real early. Pretty typical for this time of year. It's a great time of year, in my opinion. I always say that baseball and basketball conference tournament season is so exciting. Like there's in baseball 29, in basketball it's 30 something. I forget the exact number, but you just see those, backs against the wall, like win or go home. In every single conference. I mean, obviously you have like the NCAA tournament, which is that huge spectacle and where everybody wants to be and gives you the best games and best moments. But conference tournament season for real, just junkies of the sport is awesome because there's so many games, so many situations and moments. We've already had some real awesome Southland games. We've got so Lamar and McNeese will match up in a few days over there for their conference championship series. And back to the Big Ten Conference Championship, Conference Tournament, whatever you want to call it. Illinois, Iowa, 2 o'clock, Rutgers, Michigan, 6 o'clock. Michigan has had a real rough stretch as of late. They pretty much had their spot secured in the tournament. Now they're very much in doubt. I have them outside of the bubble. D1 baseball, I believe, projected them in their field. That was dropped yesterday. Michigan, they were swept by Ohio State the last week of the season. It was really just you needed to pick up at least one win there to solidify your chances. Now you need to go on a run in this Big Ten tournament. Depends. We have kind of a softer bubble this year than most, so. I don't know if they have to win the tournament necessarily. They definitely have to make some noise at bare minimum. Washington against Ohio State at 10 o'clock Eastern, a real late start time there. We're going to have baseball all day in Omaha, Nebraska. Little precursor there to the College World Series when the final eight teams meet up over there in about a month from now. Another team in the Big Ten who I just talked about that has been real cold lately is Purdue. They were, again, just win one and you're in, I would think. They choked a couple of games against Iowa in their weekend series to wrap up the season. Just a horrible look there, not good for a bubble team. I had them even lower than Michigan. I think that Michigan did more throughout the season. Purdue got hot kind of towards the end and then yeah crumbled in that series against the Hawkeyes. So Iowa and Ohio State, two teams that have played spoiler in the Big Ten as of late. In the Ohio Valley, we've got UT Martin against Lindenwood at 4 o'clock and Southern Indiana against Morehead State at 8 o'clock. Two solid matchups there to open up that conference tournament. The SEC, which will be the first tournament to feature ABS. So no matter which side you are for or against, it will be in the SEC tournament. So it will, I think, at the very least, give us some good content out of that tournament. It'll be funny. I want to see someone just challenge a clear strike with the end towards the end of the game or something like that. You've seen it in the MLB a few times. I know it's down south, it's Hoover. Those umpires are going to get chirped like crazy with SEC crowds and ABS for the first time. I mean, you saw what it looked like in the first week in the MLB. Everyone just incessantly chirping the umpires for it's like a call that would objectively it's a very difficult call to make. A ball, this is the strike zone, the ball catches like zero point 0.3 inches of the zone and the umpire gets it wrong, they challenge it, overturn it, and everyone's letting them hear it. It's like, come on. Like, but that's what we'll see in the SEC. So Missouri Ole Miss 10:30, another early matchup there. We've got Kentucky Vanderbilt at 1:30. That is an interesting one as Kentucky is on the bubble. They actually have less SEC wins than Vanderbilt, but much higher in the metrics, RPI, DSR, stuff like that. So that will be real interesting. Kentucky, if they lose there, I believe that's a one and done tournament. I'm not sure on that. There's just so many conference tournaments and so many rules. I forget which ones are double and single elim. But that's a tough one. Kentucky beat Vanderbilt in that series, 2 games to 1, I believe, earlier this season. Um, yeah, that's a real nuanced, complicated game. I would think that Vanderbilt, they have to make a run at the SEC championship to, obtain enough wins to get back in the conversation. They just lost too many games to I don't want to say inferior opponents, but opponents who, aren't Vanderbilt. Let's put it that way. Not their year. South Carolina, Tennessee at 5:30, LSU, Oklahoma at 9 o'clock at night. LSU, there'll be a team who's just playing with house money. I could see them, really wanting to spoil other teams' chances. You go into that tournament, Oklahoma's got a lot of pressure, you know, uh, could have a much bigger fluctuation in their seeding projections with these games, whereas LSU, they know they have to win this tournament to get in. There's no chance LSU gets an at-large bid in any world. They were just too bad in the SEC. They were well below even Kentucky and Vanderbilt, who it's questionable that they even have any sort of tournament chances. So we will see how they perform. And then also one of my favorite conference tournaments, just because there's so many teams close to the bubble, is the Sun Belt Conference, which is the last alphabetical conference to start their tournament today. We've got the Raging Cajuns of Louisiana, who just took 2 games against Coastal Carolina last game of the season. I think that they have solidified their chances into the field. We know how the committee works, though. I don't know if they will operate the same way. I think that they're good. Definitely want to win at least one in the Sun Belt tournament to solidify that because I don't know if they're solidly in right now. But if they win this game against Marshall, I think they're good. We've got Georgia State against Old Dominion at 7:30. This is a 6-team bracket. This one is double elimination. So the 1 seed is Southern Miss. They will play the winner of 5 seed South Alabama and 4 seeded Troy. And we've got 6 seed Texas State taking on 3 seed App State on the other side of the bracket. Oh, excuse me. I was looking at the bracket wrong. So Southern Miss gets the winner of TBD. The lower seeded first round winner. Okay, okay. So Southern Miss will either get Marshall, Georgia State, or Old Dominion, the lowest seed who advances from those single elimination games I talked about earlier. and then Coastal, the two seed, gets the higher seeded. So I'm imagine that they will get their rematch against Louisiana. I mean, I don't want to count Marshall out, but Louisiana's been good down the stretch. I think that they will take that one and face Coastal. You don't know for sure. So if Marshall wins that, they will get Southern Miss. If Louisiana gets that, they will get Coastal. And the other winner gets the other team. That's how that goes. So we've got Texas State versus App State. Winner of that gets the winner of the Coastal and Louisiana or otherwise game. And then South Alabama, Troy, the winner of that gets the winner of the Southern Miss versus to be determined. Okay, so there's a few teams. Texas State, who earlier in the season, they were pretty solidly in, and then they really crumbled down the stretch. That sweep against South Alabama was not good, bad time. Then they got smoked by UTSA 19-4 in a rivalry game just as they were starting to pick back up from that loss. So they need to make a run. I think maybe if they get to the championship, they can bubble their way back into an at-large, but I think that they need to win the Sun Belt. App State would need to win the Sun Belt. Louisiana, I think that they would be good. South Alabama, they're an interesting one. I think if they make a run, that they could have a real bubble case. Same with Troy. They picked up some big wins. They beat Alabama late in the season. They have, won a lot of Sun Belt series. So as the four seed, if they can beat South Alabama and then if they could beat Southern Miss, then they've got a real good case to be in the field, I would say. It would be tough to rule them out after that. So I'll take a break from this conference tournament stuff. Make sure you go watch that Sun Belt tournament. It's going to be real fun, real exciting down in Montgomery, Alabama. There's going to be a lot of fans there. A lot of teams have a lot on the line, so it's going to be super intense. The SEC tournament is great. It's around the same area, of course, but a lot of these teams, like Georgia, they've got a national seed guaranteed in the first round. They won the SEC by 3.5 games. They're not going to try 100% to win all these games. I'm telling you that right now. They're going to punt a little bit with their pitching because it is more important to a team like that at this stage in the season to save your arms and attack the NCAA tournament bracket as best you can instead of picking up, one or two more SEC wins when you've already got the one seed locked up. You'll see that with UCLA in the Big Ten. You'll see that with Georgia Tech in the ACC. I think you'd see that with UNC in the ACC a little bit. Maybe even like a Texas, you might see that. Just because, those teams, they're hosting. Like they've done enough. They've locked it in. So it's not going to be as much on the line, as intense for some of those teams, whereas the Sun Belt, like Southern Miss, even the number one team, they've accomplished a lot. I thought Coastal was going to be better than them this season. I ranked Coastal above Southern Miss in a couple of mid-major rankings that I released earlier this season. But Southern Miss has had a fantastic year, led by they call him the pitching guru, Christian Ostrander. He's just a great coach. Real, real good program that they're running over there. Yeah, a real quality program that the Southern Miss Golden Eagles run. I saw a stat that they were, I think was the only mid-major team. I'm not sure, but if they were the only or first since X year. So don't quote me on that. But the main point of the stat was that they have undergone 10 consecutive seasons with at least 40 wins. That is so impressive. That's incredible for a team down in Hattiesburg who, they don't have the money that in Alabama or that an Ole Miss has to go out and get recruits and whatnot. Like I said, I'll take a break from some of the conference tournament talk to do a quick sponsor creator shout out that I usually do on these shows. And then we'll get into our guest spot of the week with Ty Sallie of NJIT and the Hungry Dogs. Before any of that, I would like to thank all of you once again. None of this would be possible without any of you, without supporters, players and coaches, any of you who listen to the pod who have joined already. Thank you all so, so much. Thank you to everyone who listens to this show, who views my content, who reads the articles, who likes, shares, reposts, who follows, subscribe. Thank you all so, so much. It means a tremendous amount as an independent creator. I only started this a little bit over a month ago, and it has seen so much more growth than I thought it ever would by this point. And that just makes me really just psyched and excited for the future and where this can continue to grow to. We still don't have any sponsors right now. We're still in talks. If this is something that interests you, if you think it's going to grow as well, and this is a brand that you want to promote your brand on, contact me. My DMs are always open. I really want to, get some sponsors on here. We can work something out. So, you know, um, DM me, Instagram, X, wherever you can find me, personal, business. I will try and see it. I'll try to get eyes on anyone who reaches out to me. I try and, engage with people all the time. Also with DMs being open, the same goes for creators. If you want to write about college baseball, if you want to create content, if you think that you can be a creator for the rundown, if this is something that interests you and you love college baseball, contact me. Send me your resume, your portfolio. We'll work something out. I would love to bring more writers and creators on the show. Right after this episode drops, I'm going back to my day job for the day. So I wish I could just, stay home and consume college baseball all day and talk more about it, but I've got to go, make some bread. It is what it is, but I want to grow this, and that involves bringing sponsors and creators on so that we can propel this and send it to the freaking sky. So, with that, it is time for our guest spot of the week. And this week we are joined by Ty Sallie, who just wrapped up his collegiate baseball career with the NJIT Highlanders this past weekend. How are you feeling, Ty?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Awesome, just having players on as always. It's a big thing that we're big on over here at the Mid-Major Rundown. So, tell us about your career and what it meant to you to be a Division I baseball player at NJIT.
Yeah, so for me, in high school, my dream was to obviously play Division One, like most other baseball players. Um, Came in 2021. It was kind of a big shock. The competition is definitely a huge upgrade going from high school to college. I played public school Jersey baseball, so it wasn't any serious competition. So one thing that kind of was an eye opener for me was just the command of pitchers. The stuff, the secondary pitches, the mental side of the game was a very big difference for me. So I feel like coming into NJIT, it kind of took me a while to really, get going. I had some struggles early in my career, but I was able to, stick stick close with teammates, have good coaching. My family was there every step of the way, and I couldn't be grateful for my time at NJIT. I had a blast.
Yeah, that's great, man. What would you say would be the number one moment or accomplishment throughout your career at NJIT?
Personal accomplishment, definitely my 2025 season. In 2024, I probably had the worst year of baseball of my life, hit 191. Kind of was down on myself really hard, but after that 2024 season, I kind of had a shift in mindset. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go out there. I'm going to give it my all. No more feeling sorry for myself. And I come out the next year. I remember we were playing Sam Houston, and it was just like one of those weekends where I couldn't get out. Not to brag or anything, but it was like any ball I put in play was a hit. And I just felt confident that year. And so at the end of the year, we ended up getting the 2 seed in the America East tournament. And then, I eventually got first team all conference nods, which I was super blessed to receive.
Yeah, yeah, shout out. Great season by you, for
Hmm.
sure. And
Appreciate
then
it.
yeah, yeah. You also have a podcast of your own, the Hungry Dogs podcast. If you want to tell the people about what you do over there as well.
Yeah. So kind of my whole idea, I was in grad school this past semester, not much in-person class. So I was like, I got to kind of find something to do with all this free time on my hands. So I was just thinking, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast. I have a lot of teammates who have played college baseball, been around baseball, things like you're doing. They have their own accounts, they have their own, news platforms and all this stuff. So I was like, no, I might as well, give this a shot and just kind of see where it goes. I never really had any like plan or like master plan for what I wanted to do with it down the road, but it's been great having people on the pod, just sharing all their experiences. And I feel like it's a good thing for people because, when I was coming into college, I kind of didn't really know all these experiences that people were having, and it wasn't something that I was going out looking for. Which, yeah, I'm just happy to give back to people who watch it, and that's kind of my whole plan with it. Just have some fun.
Yeah, that's a big thing that we're about over here too, is just getting eyes on the game because like
Yeah.
when I grew up, like everyone watches the MLB, like
Hmm.
that's what I was really into. And I mean, I knew a little bit about Division 1 baseball, but then over the past few years, I just got really into it. I had a work experience doing stats and scorekeeping for D1
Hmm.
baseball, and it just made me realize how awesome it is, how many teams there are, how many conferences, just how many tight games, how many guys who can just mash or shove on the
Hmm.
mound. And it's awesome. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I love that you're
it's
doing that, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's crazy to see like where the game has kind of gone from when I was in high school to when I was a freshman at NJIT to now when I just graduated. Like you're seeing a lot of mid majors become like these powerhouses, like
Hmm.
Coastal Carolina, like perfect example. Like they're gonna probably host a regional. I haven't really been keeping up, but the way they're
Yeah, they're
playing, like yeah,
they're like on the bubble for hosting a
mhm.
regional, but even so, just making a run to the Natty last year, like that
Yeah,
was
yes,
incredible to watch. Like,
yeah, yeah.
oh
Like
my
with
gosh.
the new coach too, like
Hmm.
you're starting to see, some guys stay loyal to these mid majors too, just because they can actually compete, and they don't have to go to a power four or a different school just to get to that bigger spotlight.
Yeah, and it's like, especially you would think in NIL, it's even more difficult to keep
Yeah.
anyone anywhere, but you are seeing a lot of guys with that continuity and keeping mid-major rosters together, and it's
Hmm.
huge for the game. I agree.
Yeah.
So, I want to transition back over to your baseball career, ask a few more questions about that before we
Hmm.
wrap up. So, you played a few different positions on the diamond. You were listed as an infielder slash outfielder on the NJIT
Yeah.
website before settling into center field for most of your senior career. Did you have a position you preferred or felt like most comfortable in, or just anywhere, like stick me anywhere and
Yeah.
I'll do it?
So it's kind of a funny story. So my whole life growing up, I played shortstop. I was an infielder, but I have great speed. That's my biggest tool. That's my best tool. So in high school, I played shortstop every game, and then I remember I get on campus to NJIT. They're like, you know what, we're gonna stick you in the outfield. So it was a big switch for me. I kind of wasn't even close to the outfielder I was back then than I am now. I'd say my defense has come a long way just with my athleticism and my speed. But I definitely prefer the outfield. Just I feel like I can let my tools show a lot more in the outfield. Center field, I feel like I can get to a lot of balls that most people can't get to. So yeah, to answer your question, I think center field a lot less stressful in a way. I can kind of just go out there and play.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome having that like feeling loose out there.
Mhm.
And then as someone who experienced a career at this level, what would your advice be to younger players who are trying to make it in Division 1?
Yeah, my advice for younger players would definitely be, uh, don't overlook the mental side of the game. Um, that was a big shock for me coming from public school baseball in Jersey in high school to mid-major baseball Division 1. Like it's a monster. Like it'll eat you up and spit you right back out. So the one thing that I wish I kind of did earlier in my college career was stay confident, trust all the hard work that I put in, and just be the guy who I believe I am. um, Never let the struggles kind of affect your mindset. Never let it destroy your confidence because you're there for a reason. um, that's something that my coach would always say to me is like, dude, you're very talented, like you're here for a reason. You just got to let your athleticism show, let all the hard work you put in, let it show. And then I think that was the big click for me in my career. I kind of just went into every game saying like, I'm just going to play hard, whatever happens happens. Like in baseball, it's such a mentally tough game. You fail 7 times out of 10 and you're considered great. So it's like you got to be able to take wins even though you didn't succeed in a way. Like if I line out to dead center, I'm going to take that swing 10 times out of 10. So I think that's the thing with young hitters and people who haven't been, in higher competition is they expect to get a hit every time, and when they don't, it kind of wavers their gameplay from game to game. Like you need to be able to show up every day with the same attitude, same focus.
Yeah, yeah, that's great stuff right there. I definitely agree with what you said. Like if you had a hard line drive to the outfield and the outfielder just happens to be in the right spot, there's nothing you did wrong. That's not,
Yeah, nah.
anything that you can control. You did
Hmm.
what you needed to do. So yeah, great
Yeah,
stuff. And then I usually do this with these interviews. I'll like transition to like some fun, like lighthearted stuff to wrap up.
sweet.
So were there any chirps or trash talk in your career that made you stop
Oh,
and think? You're like, oh, that was actually kind of a good one instead of just in one ear out the other.
oh, I gotta think. I've gotten chirped a lot actually in center field.
Had that in the outfield.
Uh, I would get, so my pants would always be tailored. So I'd like my baseball pants tight. So I can't remember where I was. It might have been High Point, but they were like saying I was wearing my sister's pants or saying I was wearing my girlfriend's pants. But one of the funnier ones actually was I remember we were at Bryant, and I think I can't remember what sports team was in center field, but it was
Oh,
might have been women's field hockey or women's soccer. They looked up my Instagram, found everything, and just they were just ripping it. They read every caption, everything. Yeah, and it was a long day. So I personally, I don't mind people chirping me. That kind of sometimes it kind of locks me in because
yeah.
when they'll say some personal stuff, but obviously, I don't let that affect me. But it just makes me want to make a play. So
Yeah, yeah. The Instagram captions is pretty funny.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
funny.
I considered going private throughout the season just to avoid that ever again.
Yeah. Oh, I hear you. And I had Lorenzo on a couple weeks ago. I asked
Hmm.
him these questions. As another Jersey guy, I feel like I gotta ask you as well.
Hmm.
I mean, I could skip this one by your hat. I see you're wearing
Yeah.
a Yankees hat. You're a Yankees guy, not a Mets guy. Can't
Hmm.
blame you. I'm a Mets fan. It's rough
No
over
worries.
here.
No worries. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're playing right now. You guys beat us what, twice, right?
Yeah, but we
Huh.
can't beat anyone else. So
Yeah, hey, take the wins you can get.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But if you're a football guy at all, Jets or Giants?
Oh, this is gonna shock you. I'm a Carolina Panthers fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
kind of the question that you're probably gonna ask is how in the world is that possible? So when I was younger, I grew up watching Cam Newton at Auburn, and then
Mhm.
I kind of he got drafted by the Carolina Panthers. I loved the Carolina blue color. That was just my favorite color, still is. And I had the Superman shirts. I had the Carolina Panthers beanie
Oh yeah.
back when I used to play football when I was young and all the way through high school. So I always wore number one. Like Cam Newton is kind of my guy. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
story behind that.
Yeah, he was fun to watch for sure.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then between New Jersey and New York, who's got the better slice?
I gotta say Jersey just because I'm from Jersey, but I've had some good slices in New York. I forget the John's Obliquer, that's a good slice.
Okay.
But Jersey, I feel like New York, there's only a couple spots. Jersey, North Jersey, you can kind of go anywhere. South Jersey too, but I'm from North Jersey, so yeah, I'm gonna say Jersey.
There you go. All right. And then anything you want to tell the people before we get out of here, Ty?
Yeah, I'll dive into a little bit more into my career. I would say for people who are looking to get recruited, in the landscape of college baseball with the whole transfer portal, NIL, things like that. I would just my advice would be to go somewhere where you feel like you can play, you feel like you can develop. That's one thing that's kind of getting overlooked in the game now is coaches are expecting you to come to these schools and perform right when you get on campus, which is fine. Like teams want to win, I get that. But one thing as a player, you don't want to go to somewhere and sit on the bench for a couple years. You want to play as soon as you can, and maybe you go sit on the bench somewhere, but at least you're developing. You're around, great people, good coaching staff. That's one thing that I had at NJIT that I'm forever grateful for. Um, Even though I wasn't playing my best early in my career, my coaches, they never gave up on me. And I thank them for that. They could have easily, went the other way, looked to get someone out of the portal, but that's something that I'm forever grateful for. and I'm glad that I was able to turn it around at the end.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's a great story and really just awesome to, have belief in your guys like that.
Mhm.
So thank
Yeah,
you very much for your time, Ty.
yeah, I
Go check
appreciate it.
out, yeah, go check out the Hungry Dogs podcast, everybody. And that was a real awesome interview with Ty Sallie, everybody. That's a big thing that we're about here, bringing on players, coaches, alumni to get a multitude of perspectives from around the game over here on the show. And I think I'm going to talk about some Field of 64 stuff before I send you all off on your merry days. So my Field of 64 that I dropped a couple days ago, we've got one seeds. These are, locks, shoe-ins. Even if you go one and done in their conference tournaments, they will host in the first round. UCLA, Georgia, Georgia Tech. Those are the top three teams in the country. I've heard a lot of debate recently about what order they should be. I go UCLA, Georgia, Georgia Tech. I think the common sentiment is UCLA, Georgia Tech, Georgia. Um, I've also heard a little bit, some rumblings that UCLA shouldn't be in the one spot after they've been a little cold the past few weeks. It's tough. It's real tough. I've got UCLA number one still just because of how dominant they were earlier in the season, how just good they've been year in, year out against top comp. They've won bad weekend against Washington, won still good weekend against Oregon, shaky weekend, I guess you could say, but I've got them number one. You can make a case for Georgia or Georgia Tech at number one. I've got Georgia number two. Daniel Jackson, just a unit. Georgia Tech has a bunch of units too. Vaughn Lackey, Drew Burris, just dogs on that team. Yeah, I know Georgia Tech beat Georgia. I guess it's just, performance down the stretch. I think they're interchangeable. I think Georgia and Georgia Tech are interchangeable. I struggled. I was looking at that spot and I was like, I don't know. Georgia with that series win over Auburn. If they lost that series, I would have gone Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech that loss against Mercer late in the season might be a blemish. I think you could really put either one. I think if you think that I'm wrong and you put Georgia Tech number two, I'd say, yeah, okay, you have a great case for that. Like I can't disagree with you. I just think the takeaway that we can make here is that those have been the three far and away best teams throughout the season. UCLA, Georgia, Georgia Tech, and then I think UNC is kind of the consensus number four right behind them. Texas is right there too. They've been solid. Then Auburn, Texas A&M, they'll host. Florida State will host Florida. They've got a host locked up, I would think. Southern Miss, they definitely will host first round if they have one of those top eight national hosts, which means they would be hosting a super regional because, of course, you get the eight host against the nine host. That would be national. So the top eight are your national hosts, top 16 are your regional hosts. So I think they're right on that national host bubble. I think it comes down to Southern Miss and Alabama. It really will be who performs better in their conference tournament. So I think you will see Alabama. They won't be one of those punting teams in the SEC tournament. A lot of people think they will. I think if they punt, you have and Southern Miss wins the Sun Belt, like you have to give Southern Miss that spot based on what they've accomplished this season. That's just me. I could definitely see the committee going the other way. I think Southern Miss, if they win the Sun Belt, they're a lock for a top eight. Like I don't see how they wouldn't be with what they've done this year. So Bama, even if they go one and done, they won't have that national seed. I don't think maybe they will. I don't think that they would, but they're hosting a regional regardless. Like you will see Tuscaloosa regional. Um, Dub V, West Virginia. I would say this is where it starts to get shaky. They've got to win one in the Big 12 tournament. I think if they do, they'll be fine. That road sweep of Kansas was massive coming back and winning that last game against TCU was big too. I think we'll see a Morgantown regional. That would be electric. Morgantown, it's all up in the air, so I will knock on wood. You will hear it. That's wood. Knocked on it. Maybe if there's a regional there, we'll have boots on ground. We will see. That would be electric. But keep you guys updated on that. I think Oregon with that series win over USC, I think that was like a win and you host type of game. Maybe if they go one and done, I could see the committee hosting, not letting them host. But Dub V and Oregon are just barely on the bubble, but it's like bubble looking in type of thing. Mississippi State, I also think is on the hosting bubble, but I think it's like a Dub V. Oregon situation, just win one, maybe two in the SEC, you're good. Just because I don't think there's a ton of teams on the other side of the hosting bubble that are too strong besides one. There's one calamity I'm having with this hosting bubble. I'm just like, Nebraska, I think will host. Lincoln, they've done enough throughout the season. Some people will knock them for that sweep against Ohio State, which, yeah, that's the only reason they're on this bubble in the first place. If they didn't get swept by Ohio State, we would be talking about them as a sure host and maybe even a national host. Um, I think they'll be okay. Again, if they go one and done, maybe not. Here's where it gets tricky. This is one of the toughest decisions I had to make was Arkansas or Kansas as the last host. I don't know. Wake Forest is getting some noise. Oregon State, I don't think will be hosting. I don't think that it's tough as an independent, but I just don't think that they did enough with the schedule that they had that last, not sweeping Air Force at the end of the season hurts them too. Taking one more loss against a lower strength of schedule opponent than some of these other teams, that could hurt you. Um, Arkansas and Kansas, I think Kansas had it until getting swept by W. If they had been able to sweep BYU, they would have got back in there. But, taking a loss against BYU, oh. But if you put Kansas over Arkansas, it's the same thing as Georgia and Georgia Tech. Like, I can't disagree with you. I can't blame you for that logic. I just think that these are very, tough decisions to make, and we'll see which direction the committee goes. I could see them even throwing in, a Wake Forest, or I don't think USC will get it. Oregon State, I could see. Coastal, if they win the Sun Belt, as I just said with Ty, they're on the hosting bubble. By that, with Coastal, I think I mean if they win the Sun Belt, they could host. If not, no, I don't think that they'll get in there. Just too much of a slip up at the end of the season. Um, Losses to Louisiana and Old Dominion really hurt them. Oklahoma State, yeah, if they make some noise in the Big 12 tournament, I could see them. Maybe Cincinnati. Yeah, I don't really see any other teams that I'm looking at in front of me that I think could host. I don't think Ole Miss hosts unless maybe they win the SEC. Tennessee, same thing. UC Santa Barbara, they're not hosting. Jack State, I don't think will host. No. Yeah, no. So yeah, Arkansas and Kansas was the one that I really was stuck on. I'll kind of just rip through each one. So the Los Angeles Regional, I've got UCLA, BC, Arizona State, San Diego State. I didn't want to put BC there. It doesn't really make any sense. But, when you're doing those 14 pods, I think they ended my 29 to 32. So you have to give them either UCLA or Georgia, and then Miami, the other one, because they were also in that 14 pod, and neither of them can play ACC teams in the first round. Yeah, the rules for the baseball tournament, if you're a basketball guy, because that's where my primary background was before I really, really got into this and wanted to, start something like this and get eyes on it, is I knew the basketball tournament better than the baseball tournament at a younger age, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And these rules were a lot for me to learn at first, but I think I'm getting it now. So we got Georgia, Miami, Missouri State, LIU, Georgia Tech, UTSA, Kent State, and Binghamton. I threw Kent State in there as a MAC champion. You could easily throw Miami, Ohio in there. I think Miami, Ohio did take down the regular season title, but Kent State has the matchup advantage, I want to say. And Kent State, I think, has more wins against quad one opponents. They had that series against Tennessee earlier this season. They did good against Pitt and Michigan in a couple of those midweeks. Um, but yeah, I think I threw Miami, Ohio in my first four out just because I think if they don't win the MAC, I don't think the committee will be very beneficial of the doubt to them. Kent State, I think, would be in the same scenario. So, that was like an interchangeable type thing. I don't think either of them squeezes into the bubble, even though they've got a case to for sure. All right, and then back to the regionals. I've got the Chapel Hill Regional, which would be UNC, Oklahoma, West Carolina, Bucknell. I threw West Carolina in as the SoCon winner, even though I think Mercer took that down in the regular season. West Carolina had the series win, so I also want to throw West Carolina in there because Mercer, I wanted to show that if they don't win the SoCon, that they are in West Carolina. I don't know. That ends up, I think, how the post-conference tournament bubble looks. And then Bucknell, although I would have put Holy Cross in if I made those Field of 64 projections today based on yesterday's results. Over in Austin, it's Texas, UCF, Mercer, who I just talked about, and the UIC Flames, who kind of came out of nowhere. To put themselves in the field discussions. We'll see if they can win the conference tournament and make their way in. Auburn, Jack State, Virginia Tech, and Rider, who is the projection to win the MAAAAAC. One of the last times we'll be able to say that before they rename the conference. Texas A&M, UC Santa Barbara, Louisiana, who I've got in after those two wins against Coastal. I don't see how they wouldn't be. Um, SIUE to wrap up the College Station Regional. Florida State, Tennessee, Campbell, Yale, and Tallahassee Regional. Congratulations again to the Yale Bulldogs, who I got boots on ground for some awesome content and close-up videos and photos of their conference tournament championship in the Ivy. Florida, Cincy, High Point, UNF in the Gainesville Regional. UNF is pretty much a lock to get Florida State or Florida if they can make their way into the field. Then Southern Miss, I've got as the last national seed right now. They would have an electric regional matchup. I projected them with Ole Miss, NC State, and St. John's. That would just be, oh my gosh, imagine those fan bases in the same building at the same time. Come on now. The best non-national seed I have projected is Alabama, although they could easily play their way into being a national seed with the SEC tournament. This would maybe be like a group of death because Bama, Oklahoma State, Liberty, and in the field of 64 projections that I posted on the rundown.com, I had or mmrundownpod.com. Excuse me. I don't even know my own URL. Nice. Bama, Oklahoma State, Liberty, and I had Sela in there, but now it will be either Lamar or McNeese. We'll see how that turns up. But yeah, Bama, OK State, and Liberty. Sheesh. That's three quality teams. The Morgantown Regional. Some there would be fights if these were the four teams. Imagine this: West Virginia, Coastal Carolina, UVA, and St. Joe's. Yeah, those four fan bases in Morgantown. Yeah, I think you'd see some. If I get boots on ground there, which knock on that wood again, I think I'll see some fist fights probably. I've got Virginia in my last four in. I think that they have just been awful down the stretch. I know they've dealt with some injuries, which kind of makes that tougher, but just you needed to win that series against Louisville. I think that if they go one and done in the ACC tournament, like some of these bubble teams like Miami, Ohio, Troy, I would put over Virginia. They have done nothing over the last month of the season. You need to do something in the ACC tournament. I've seen some projections that had them out completely. I've seen some that had them as a two seed. I don't have them as a two seed. I think that's kind of crazy. They were, you know, they haven't been ranked for a while now. They've just been slipping up since. I know Louisville has Tate Davis, who's been mentioned on the show before. He is an absolute dog, but they don't have pitching. So that's just not a series you can lose at that time of the season when there are already so many question marks around your team already. So that wraps up Virginia talk. This would be a super fun regional too. We've got Oregon, the Ducks, Oregon State, who I think you're going to see those two teams meet. I think Oregon will be one of the last four national seeds, and I think Oregon State will be one of the first four, or not national seeds, regional hosts. And then Oregon State will be just outside of that host bubble, and the committee's going to put them together. You've seen it. They're going to do it. Gonzaga will be there too, I think. And then Oral Roberts will be there as the fourth team if they can win the Summit League. Gonzaga, I think that they are in the bubble if they don't win the WCC. Um, did a little bit of a slip up towards the middle of the season, right after that huge winning streak. Didn't start their season great either. But I think that they would be on the right side of the bubble, provided maybe if they go one and done, maybe not. But I think the Zags are in a soft through bubble year. That would be my projection. The Mississippi State Starkville regional would be Miss State, Wake Forest, TCU, and Tarleton. TCU's in my last four in, but they are one of the stronger ones. I think TCU will probably be okay. It's ECU, Kentucky, Virginia, who are the shakier last four teams, and then Miami, Ohio, and Troy for the first four out teams who can make some noise. I also have Michigan and UAB in my first four out. It's a softer bubble. I'll say that. I don't think that those teams have as much of a bubble case. Miami, Ohio / Kent State, as we talked about that little MAC discussion earlier. And then Troy. Troy is the one who, I think they've probably got, a real good bubble case just based on some of the wins they've got. Depends what they do in the Sun Belt tournament, of course. In the last two regionals, I projected Nebraska, Kansas, Kentucky, Wright State. Wright State, if they can win the Horizon. Sorry, that name just slipped my head for a moment. So many conferences, so many tournaments, so many brackets I've looked at the past few days. You might see some fights there, Nebraska, Kansas, Kentucky. Yeah, fun stuff. And then it's kind of the opposite of a group of death. Arkansas, USC, East Carolina, Bethune-Cookman, except for Bethune. They're sneaky. Look at some of the teams they've taken down this season. Little swag dark horse of mine right there. Uh, Arkansas, as I said, barely even in the host conversation. USC, they've got the pitching. Their pitching is phenomenal, but I don't know if their bats stack up to some of these other teams like a Bama, like Florida, like Southern Miss, like Florida State. Um, Especially some of the top teams like Georgia, Georgia Tech, like far better offense than USC. ECU, who I don't even know where to put them at this point. Part of me wants to put them nowhere near this tournament. Part of them says they're going to make it. They have a committee member, in their athletic department, so that's big to remember. I've got them last four in right now. They at least got some wins their last series of the season to help that case, but overall, just too many slip ups towards the end of the year. And then yeah, Arkansas, USC, ECU, Bethune. That is the last regional field that I've projected, and that's about all that I've got for you guys today. So, great week of conference tournaments. We got a ton of great content from the weekend, so go check that out if you haven't already. From the Iona and Yale wins over the weekend. Got an awesome, awesome interview with Ty Sallie. Real proud of where this show is going. Thank you all so much again. If you have any interest in joining this show at some point or sponsoring at some point, again, hit me up. Thank you all for making it to this point. Have an excellent week. We've got a great week of games ahead. And thank you for listening to the Mid-Major Baseball Rundown, everybody.